wanted to start with the astrology because we talked about it in the podcast. We talked about it. I talked about it with myself. If you listen to the podcast, this isn't necessarily new news, but I wanted us to look at this chart a little bit more in depth because there are things that I didn't speak about that I think are really interesting when we look at sage and time, and we look at this particular cycle of time. So if we look, so first of all, this is, depending on where you are in the world, this is the clock face, right? And so all the planets are going to have the same aspects, but they might be some, if you're in a certain part of the world, those aspects might be in the upper quadrant, or they might be in different houses. They're all going to be in the same sign. They're all going to be aspecting each other in the same way. So we're going to talk about the general themes of how they interact with the signs, which is how I do the podcast anyway, and keep it pretty general. But if we look down here, this was kind of the bigger topic that I focused on in the podcast. We have the sun and the moon at 20 degrees of Capricorn. Pluto's at 29 degrees of Capricorn. And I mentioned that one of the big deals, the next gathering we have is going to be the big day when Pluto moves into Aquarius. And the day before that, the sun is squaring Pluto. So it's going to be a really neat time. But this is this new moon is setting the stage for this huge energetic, cultural, emotional, psychological transition that we are going through individually and collectively. So it's okay that we might be feeling a little bit unsettled because this is an unsettling time. But I wanted to look at the whole aspect. So I mentioned that in the podcast, there's a lot of Capricornian energy, but when you look at this chart, you can see it. There's Altair is at the bottom here. That's actually at 2 degrees of Aquarius, but we have Pluto, Sun, Moon, Quawar, Phallus, Mars, and Ixion. The celestial bodies that I'm aware of and dealing with. There's a lot more, I'm sure, but that's a nice amount of energy. And I wanted to explore first off a little bit more what that means. So if you remember, Ixion in a previous broadcast is Pluto's lawless brother, which sounds a little bit unnerving. It can be, but that depends on whether you are in a space of seeking personal evolution and group evolution and healing, or whether you're shut down. So the lawlessness can be very chaotic, but it can also be this sense of empowered clarity. So that's kind of one of the energetics that's coming through in regards to our structures, Capricorn, in regards to the things that no longer serve, and also the foundation that we're going to be laying. So there's going to be this sense of empowered clarity, coupled with Ixion is conjunct Mars. So that's interesting, right? Because Mars is a version of divine masculine energy, and it can be a little bit I am action, almost Aries oriented, but it can also be, divine masculine and action. That's part of what we need to create a new world. We do need, if the feminine principle is the infinite possibility in alchemy, and the male principle is the grounding down of it, it's time to start to actually lay that ground. So it's really actually fortunate for us to have Ixion conjunct Mars. Next, we see Phallus and Quawar together at 8 degrees of Capricorn. So I talked about that a couple podcasts ago. Phallus is a centaur discovered in 1992, I think. And it's kind of, what it's known for is taking all these nebulous, kind of whimsical, out there ideas and moving beyond linear space and time to create things. So this is neat because I think part of the unsettledness that is in the collective is the how and the why, and the desire for these things. And we can feel that we have this yearning and this dream and these things. And then the interesting challenge might be, well, how the heck am I going to make that happen? And the answer is, we'll get to a meditation. There's no making it happen, but Phallus is conjunct Quawar. Phallus is going to help us move beyond space and time to ground things down. So it's a matter of keeping on the path. And Quawar is a trans-Neptunian object discovered in the early 2000s. This has a orbit very similar to Pluto, but if you remember that it's actually a much more balanced version and a harmonious energetic, similar energetic, but it's gonna the liberation is gonna be less shocking. It's gonna be more kind of according to the natural and universal laws of oneness. So all of this together with Sun and Moon and Pluto in Capricorn, I would like to offer is giving us the message to not just to hang on, but to have trust is the word that comes through. It's not faith or hope. It's just, it's an even, we don't have to, it's like this deeper knowing and this practice that all is well. So that's, I think, a really neat part of the astrological message that's coming through. We also have Venus semi-conjunct Ceres up here in Sagittarius. And I mentioned in the broadcast that the galactic center and Mercury are together in Sag. And so that's about our energetic communication, galactic center being the very center of everything, filters information through to Sirius, gives it to our sun, we receive it. This is about our communication, the other energetic that is in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius can be a little bit outlandish. It can be a little bit dreamers. It's the archer. But Venus and Ceres together are beautiful goddess energies. Ceres is the goddess of the harvest, to put it simply. That's her symbol, is that sickle that you would cut the wheat with, right? So to have this sense of comfort and peace and being able to trust that all is well and there's nothing necessarily for us to be doing. So as we move through the next 10 days of time, Pluto's down at the very anaretic degree of Capricorn. It's going to be shifting into Aquarius. So whatever is coming up right now, let it come up, let it inform you about the types of seeds that you want to be planting, and be willing to just plant those seeds, even in the face of whether or not there's all the things that our 3D mind thinks has to happen. So that's the kind of deeper astrological energetic that I wanted to share with everybody right now. I'm going to stop that share and I'm going to jump really quickly to why the herbs that are coming through are in sync with this. So let me move over to the course materials. I'm going to call it the course materials because that is just how I've always called it, but the materials. So this is my screen share for what you guys are going to be able to see starting today. So there's 2 monographs. If you see here on the left, the New Moon Herb Time, New Moon Herb Sage. These are pulled from that book. There's a lot of other herbs, but I like her writing so much, and I've done it a couple years in a row now, and I just think it's really neat to bring a couple different sources of people who've been doing this for a while. So, and these are shored up. Depending on what you're going through, this plant will do one of 2 things, which is why I think it's so neat to consider how intelligent these plants are. And if we think about where we're headed as a collective and the types of shifts that we hope to be able to do, the plants have so many wisdom keys to them. And I think to get back to the why of sage and thyme, sage is a wisdom plant, and sage is going to help us to remember the things that we may have forgotten and we may that culturally may have been lost. And thyme and sage are both going to be protectors for us right now to help us feel a little bit like there's a buffer between some of the intense energy and ourselves, because we're starting to be more and more and more energetically sensitive, and there's big energies around us. So to have that protection, but to also have the fire that comes with both of those. They're very potent medicine, and they've got, like I said, the essential oils are super. You don't want to use an essential oil of these guys with a, I wouldn't say to put that in a thing, to put a drop in a cup of water and drink it. That's going to burn your throat. It's going to hurt. That's why you're only really going to be wanting to use the tea of these things if you're really going to be working with its medicine. They're very fiery, very potent medicines in the northern hemisphere, because we are in the depths of winter. It's a nice thing to have that kind of internal fire stoked. And also to just get to beyond the astrology, the seasonality. These are some of the most, in my personal experience, when I'm fighting cold and flu, oregano, sage, thyme, and rosemary are like super heavy hitters. And even just making a tea of that. One of the things we'll get to in the I think I'm going to stop sharing and stop talking about, because you guys can read that if you want to. There's a 4 Thieves, if you've heard of the 4 Thieves oil, and there's that goes back to when there was the plague, and sage and thyme were both used to counteract the plague. But there's a story that some village in France, everybody had died of the plague, and there were these 4 thieves that were coming through and taking all the goodies off the dead people's bodies. They were caught, they were about to be killed, but then they said that they'd let them live if they shared their secret of how they were able to go through this village. And their secret was what's known as the 4 thieves recipe, which is sage, thyme, rosemary, and lavender, to talk about the strength and the potency of the protective nature. So there's a little ritual that you can do in a way that you can make that into a tea. It's also sold as an oil. So that's kind of the link to the astrology and the herbs. I'm going to stop for a second and see if anybody has anything they want to share or ask or comment on.
Yeah, thank you very much for this, because for me, to tell you the truth, the herbs are very, very interesting, but also a little bit overwhelming, because whenever I start reading about them, it looks like everything is for everything. I don't know. Do you have this idea? Like, for example, you open the book and you read about, I don't know, about thyme, for example, right? And you read that this is for lungs, for stomach, for this, for head, for legs, for kidneys, for for everything. And it's like, and it's almost like this about every herb, right? So whenever I try to learn something from the book, it's like I've never managed to do it, because it's just so much. So I try to develop my own way of discernment, like what works for me in what cases. And I've been always looking for some clues, like like one thing, like when you said about time, that this is for courage and protection. And when I heard this courage and protection, I thought that, yeah, maybe this could be the key, right? Like, yeah, courage and protection is a little bit smaller and narrower than just 2 pages of other things. And I'd like to ask you about, how do you make tea with these herbs? Do you boil it, or you just pour hot water?
Okay, thank you. This is great. I'm gonna first address the wonderful thing. There's 2 parts to my answer. One of them is that's the reason. So I totally understand. I have so many herbal books. In theory, I'm a trained academic, and I totally get where you're like, all right, this is way too overwhelming, right? So for me, it's all about, and that's what's in the air. It's about our personal understanding and our personal experience. And so I have a depth of knowledge about a certain amount of things that I have personal experience with. And it's when we have the personal experience with it. Do you know what I'm saying? So this is great. We have this cycle to have our own experience with these 2 herbs. What does this mean for me? And then once we have the experience, Cassia, that's what I think you're getting to, is like having that experience is the understanding, is bringing all that stuff, all the little things in the monographs. That's why I wanted to at least lightly touch on the monographs. You don't have to read them. You don't have to even read the book share that I'm sharing, but see what resonates for you. Let that be what thyme and sage are about for you. Because one of the things that I was alluding to, especially with the members of the mint family, they can do 2 totally opposite things. And that's not possible in linear Western medicine. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's one of those in our understanding. So it's the magic of it is there. And that's kind of why I wanted to weave it into the circle and to have us start to experience the support of the plants in a way that is meaningful for us, and helpful. So that being said, there's a couple and I'll clue you in as we move through the cycles of time and move through the different plant families. There's infusion and decoction, which are the 2 primary ways that you would make a tea. For anything that has aerial parts, the stems and the leaves, which is what sage and thyme are, it would be infusion. Hot water, boiling water, pour it over, depending on how you do it. If it's just a little bit of a powder, like, so I have leaves and then I have powders. So if it's a powder, put it at the bottom of the thing and then just pour it in and let it steep for a little bit of time. If you're using leaves, you might have a little tea strainer, or you might just strain those leaves out. So you're just going to simply boil some water, pour it over, much like you would with make a cup of tea that from a tea bag that you bought in the store. When you're using root components like a ginger or a turmeric, especially, or anything woody, you're going to want to decoct that. Decoct just simply means boil it for a period of time in a pot. So that in that sense, you would have the herbs in the pot and you would be boiling it for 10 or 15 minutes and then you would strain it out. I'm going to make sure I signal that to you guys when that happens. For right now, for our purposes, I would just, in winter, I boil water and pour it over. In summer, you can even make sun tea out of it. Some people will say you can make a cold infusion. You can make a cold infusion. You're going to get, if you think about it, a lot less of the medicinal constituents are going to come through because the heat kind of helps it open up. The other way that you could be using these herbs, and we can get to that if you guys are interested, is making tinctures. Tinctures are typically made out of brandy. It's a 40 or more proof alcohol. So that's a lot of, that's vodka, brandy, whatever proof of your choice. You pour the alcohol over the herbs and you let it sit in a cold place, and that'll pull them. If we're trying to get the medicinal constituents out of the plant, right? So hot water and alcohol are two ways, the simplest way. And I think for me, I walk around, I rarely drink just plain water. I've always got some kind of an herb in my water, or I'm drinking, like mushroom chocolate coffee or something like that. That's just the way that because I like the herbs so much. But does that answer your question? Yeah. Anybody
Yeah,
else
and
have any?
what do you do? And what do you do with this tincture? So when you make this thing with alcohol, then what do you do with it?
Hold on. You strain it and you put it in a little, if you think about it, this is what tincture bottles look like, right? So then you've got this little dropper full of, it's a much more intense medicine. So a tincture, which would be more like an extraction, is when the dosage for tinctures, and actually let's get into that later this year because I think that would be interesting. You take a little dropper full. So for example, one of the things I have over here is it's a cold and flu tincture. I have a digestive tincture and a cold and flu tincture. And they're these big bottles, and depending on whether so this would have elderberry and elderflower and ginger. And I would take a dropper full before I went to bed if I was fighting off a cold. If it was a digestive tincture, when we get to chamomile, it's a really good digestive. Well, so is sage and thyme, but you would take a little dropper full of it because it's going to be a much more potent dose. You could take it after your meal if it was going to be used for, take it when you feel like you need to take it in the same way that you'll be using a tea.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anybody? Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, let's get to a meditation and then see how everybody's doing. I have a screen share. One of the things I like to do around here, especially because I feel like there's so many little special elemental creatures here, is just make gifts for all the creatures of Mother Earth. And so the meditation theme that was coming through for this is about aligning to our creative power. And that can mean a lot of different things. I would offer that it's less about the doing and it's more about the receiving, that we're already enough. We're already there. It's not out there at the end of the year. It's not out there once Pluto's in Aquarius. It's now. So I love the idea that nature teaches us that we are enough, because the animals and the plants, my dogs, they don't wander around trying to be good enough, waiting for tomorrow. They're present. So I wanted us to kind of entertain that idea as we seed this new year and as we seed this new moon, and to consider that we're co-creating everything all the time with the earth, with the nature spirits, with each other, but really to be able to, the thing I like about the plants and the animals is that they're almost a softer energetic than a lot of humanity. There's a reason why some people say dogs are easier to get along with than people, for example, right? Because the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, they're not as loud right now as we are. So let's go ahead and just take a second to close your eyes. Come into your body and just meet yourself right now and notice and see if you can meet yourself without judgment, without extra thoughts. Just notice how you're feeling, how you're vibrating, what's present, if there's anything physical going on, if there's anything on your heart or in your mind. Just be with yourself and see if is whatever's present, you can just breathe. And we're going to be breathing in through the nose, and we're going to be releasing through the mouth. And see if you can just subtly start to deepen your breath. Let the breath be easy. Let the exhale maybe even be a little bit longer than the inhale. And with the exhale, don't force it, but let it be an invitation for any tension, any distraction, any fear, anything that's ready to go to leave with the out breath. And just take a few more breaths. And see if you can feel your body and your mind responding to you, to those breaths. Relaxing a little bit, easing up a little bit, softening a little bit. There's no forcing though, there's just meeting yourself. So if something doesn't want to be released, that's okay too. And so imagine, I like this mandala that it helps us imagine that you're standing outside with your feet on the earth. You could feel the earth beneath your feet, feel your connection to her. And maybe you can imagine that you made a altar mandala, or you came across one, or maybe you can just visualize the beauty of a piece of art, maybe even set to the four directions. There's a four directions exercise for us this lunar cycle. So you can open your eyes and look at this particular mandala, or you can just imagine that you found one and you're standing somewhere out in nature. Notice how it makes you feel. This is like a piece of artwork. And whether it's aligned to the four directions or just calling in the sacred geometry of the circle itself. See if you can start to sense that there's a creative power with that shape, whether you made it or somebody else made it. That there's energy running through it. And that type of creative power is sort of very different from the linear world that we tend to spend so much time in. And now take a couple deep breaths again, imagining that you're somewhere out in nature. Maybe you're still staring at this mandala. Maybe you're looking up and taking in the trees and the plants and the sense of the fresh air. And as the natural world always does, see if you can see experience. I apologize for the barking dogs. This sense that nature knows you. Nature always sees you. Nature always sees you. You're always seen and you're always held. See if you can breathe that in for just a little bit of time. The fact that you're seen and held and known by the natural world that you might find yourself in this meditation, or maybe just the natural world that's already all around you. And see if you can, from that space, begin to entertain this energetic, this thought form that you are enough. As you are right now, with all the to-do lists that are incomplete, with the fact that things might not be totally perfect. There might be a barking dog in your meditation presentation. But see if if there's any resistance to this moment being so perfect and so worthy of gratitude for yourself. You are enough. Just start to breathe that in. Notice that the natural world already knows that's the case for everything, and you're included. And imagine that any resistance to that, your divine perfection, whether it's a thought form that you can sense or whether it's just time for something to leave, the exhale is going to be the time to let that shift. We're such magical beings as humans. So imagine that there's this way, this sense, just by entertaining, you are enough. Anything that is not of that, the breath can push it out. And when you breathe in, you're breathing in this knowing, this fresh air from nature, this fresh energetic. It's the seeding time. It's a big time for 2024, but you know what? You're enough. Everything's already perfect. So that's that magical dichotomy. Beginning from a place that all is well. A few more breaths right there. You are enough. And then from that space, if you feel like entertaining for yourself to plant a seed or several seeds for this lunar cycle, the first cycle of this year, for this year, if you feel like actually there's something in your world that is a very clear seed, then plant that seed. Or maybe you can just, if there's nothing in particular, start to cultivate a vibration. Peace, love, abundance. And see if you can start to come to understand the importance and the power of the foundational space. That's what we're learning right now. That this foundation, you are enough, is so powerful. That's the fertile ground that nourishes the seed. The seed isn't being planted in soil that's barely got any nutrients. We're nourishing that soil by vibrating that we are enough. And maybe in sync with any seed you're planting, plant some gratitude for what's already present in your world. Find someone, something, a pet, a person, a community, an experience that brings a smile to your face, that is present in your world. The fact that you're a part of this circle, the fact that you have people who love you. Whatever it is that's in your life, see if you can also plant some gratitude, or maybe even consider that nourishing the seed with gratitude. So we're doing three things. There's three energetics that are in this meditation space. You are enough. The seeds of the future, and gratitude for what is here. And let yourself do all three of those. You can alternate between all three for a few moments, or you can see if you can hold all three simultaneously. Three is a very powerful number in geometry, in nature work. You are enough. You're worthy of planting seeds. Plant some seeds. And then also be grateful for what is present. All right. I'm going to start to close this up for our gathering. It's live. You can spend more time here as much as you'd like if you're listening to the recording. Start to come back to our circle. Maybe you can, in your mind's eye, bid that mandala in that natural space farewell by sending it some love and some gratitude. So with that, one of the rituals that you'll find in the course materials is something that looks a little bit like this. If you feel like, as a part of the seeding experience for this new year, there's a natural space that you might want to make a little altar or an offering or create something. That could be a nice way to sort of really ground down and bring full circle this trifecta of you are enough, planting seeds and gratitude. And like I said, there's a ritual to support us in that lunar cycle. And then I got my screen share. And thank everybody for being here with me today, and see if anybody has anything they want to share.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. It's always good to see you. Thank you for being here. I feel so blessed to have all you guys with me today, and I think that this is going to be a really fun journey. So like I said, there's going to be a bunch of stuff and materials that you can look at in the course section. Also, if you don't get to it, that's okay. And if you have any feedback for me of things that work and things that don't, I'm open for it. So if you or anything else you want to know about, like, just now's a really good time, because this is a little thing that's growing, right? So I appreciate your feedback. All right. Tons of love to you guys. And this recording will be up there in about 48 hours. But have a wonderful new moon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.